All in Sports Network. We love sports.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into All In Aggies. I am your host, Ben Peck. We are so excited to be with you, not just today, but as you see, every day throughout the year and throughout the season, throughout the upcoming academic, athletic calendar. If you don't know my background, I am the sports anchor at KCEN and KAGS TV, the NBC affiliate in Bryan College Station. Been here for a little more than 2 years now. Before we get going on today's topics I have laid out, I did just want to kind of mention my vision for this show and how excited I am to be here with the All In Sports Network, Rogue Media Network, and really discuss anything and everything related to Texas A&M athletics. You know, if you know my background, obviously I've been in television for a long time. I spent about 3.5 years in Lubbock, covering Cliff Kingsbury and the Red Raiders with this guy, Patrick Mahomes. I'm trying to remind him that we're good family friends. You know, we go way back. But after he signed that big, $450 million contract, I haven't been able to get in touch with him. But did that, was in West Texas for a little bit at Midland Odessa, covering Midland Lee, Midland Legacy, Odessa Permian, the Friday Night Lights out there. Then came to Aggie Land February 2022. So that was a real interesting time. If you remember, that was right after the signing class, the fabled signing class kind of of that year came into the fold for Texas A&M. A lot of buzz just coming off that 8-4 season, but felt like a lot of things were heading in the right direction. My point is there was a lot of buzz and a lot of attention surrounding Texas A&M, and I've been able to feel that, encapsulate it. I grew up outside of Houston, went to high school in that area. Shout out Galveston County, Friendswood. If you know, you know. But so I've been in Texas for a little while, but really was freshly introduced to the whole Aggie Land spirit. I briefly dated a girl who briefly was in Aggie Land at the vet school in like 2017, I think. So I'm not like totally unfamiliar with College Station when I came in, but it has really, even since then, it's fascinating to see how much it has grown. And I've loved my time here. I've loved it. I've enjoyed it. I want to keep it going, and want to keep this going and give you guys, like I said, all the best in Texas A&M athletics every single day, and really focus on everything. So I want to give you a vision for my show and what I hope we can do with this before we get going. I want this show to be the most let me start that over. I'm going to try to clip this later. I want this show to be the most all-inclusive show regarding Texas A&M athletics that you see on any digital platform on a daily basis every single day. That means covering every sport on campus. That means covering not only the teams on campus, but the athletes and the coaches as they get to Aggie Land and as they leave Aggie Land. We do a lot of that with television. If there's a kid in Madisonville golfing named Sam Bennett, and he might turn out to be a big deal, or he's just a local kid. We'll see how he does. That might be interesting to explore. If there's a Katy baseball player, Katy Tompkins, Jay Slaviolette, and he's supposed to come to Texas A&M, if we can go check him out and get in touch with him and kind of get a peek behind the curtain, love to do that. High school football, same thing. That's probably not going to happen this year, but down the road in future seasons. So, that's what I want to do with the show. I want to cover the athletes that are on campus, let you know what they're doing at their professional ranks, let you know about the incoming Aggies, and then, of course, focus all on the teams that are here on campus doing great things every single day. I really think we are entering a golden age of athletics for Texas A&M, the way things are shaping up with, all the different rules that are coming out. I think, quite frankly, a lot of these rules help the rich get richer. And as you know, Texas A&M is right up there with some of the best. And the thing I love about covering Texas A&M is there's really not a program on campus. Like every single program on campus is and should be nationally relevant. I've always said if you get the top for pretty much every sport aside from maybe men's basketball, if you can just recruit, a handful of the top athletes from the state of Texas in your given sport, you should be able to build a national title contender because of how good most of the high school sports are here in Texas. And, and that's just the baseline. Obviously, you can go beyond that. So, I think we've seen it with that magical spring semester. I've got my women's tennis national championship shirt on today. We saw it with them. We've seen it with women's golf, Adela Cernusik, an individual national champion. And I want to bring you guys along for the ride to say, if anything big like that is happening on campus at A&M, you're going to know about it here. And you're going to be in the loop. You're going to be aware of it. You're going to be, you're not going to be taken by surprise that this guy, Sam Bennett, is almost leading the Masters in Augusta, okay? Because you're going to say, oh, they've been talking about him all this time. I know all about Sam Bennett. We go to golf tournaments, and I get video and highlights from them. By the way, that is also something I want to do. I want this to be a podcast where it's going to be a podcast, but I'm going to try to implement some video elements as best I can, similar to what we would do with a traditional television show. Obviously, it's not quite as buttoned up as that would be, but a little more casual. But I do want it to feel like a professional product and something that, if you listen to it, that's great, but we want you to go back and watch it too, because we're going to have highlights from across campus, interviews with guests and athletes, and stories about all the different people. So, make sure you get to that. And just like I said, so excited to be here and do this and pick this up, add it to my little portfolio, my resume. And, it's not about my resume, though. This is our show. This is your show. If you want feedback, let me know what you guys want to talk about, topics you're interested in, and we can definitely touch on those. I want this to feel like, like a community. I want this to have a communal feel, because the show doesn't work without you guys and without you watching, liking, comment, subscribing, telling your friends, telling your parents, your neighbors, your Aggie fans, your non-Aggie fans who are maybe just interested in some of the athletes on campus. So really happy to have you here. Happy to be here. And with all that being said, let's get to it. All right. First thing we're going to talk about today, we're going to break down. I've got this beautiful depth chart from Texas A&M for week 1 against Notre Dame. Going to spend some time to kind of go through that and break down some of the interesting tidbits I found here as we get ready for week 1. No surprise, quarterback 1. And by the way, follow me on my socials at Peck. I tweeted out this depth chart if you want to take a look for yourself. But start at quarterback, no surprise, Connor Wigman, QB1. I mean, I think that was obviously understood for a while. I do think it's interesting, and we're not going to go through every single backup battle, but it is the backup quarterback. I always argue that backup quarterback's like your 12th starter, because as a Bears fan in the NFL, trust me, if you don't have a backup, you're in trouble big time. I've lived it way too much. So, and I mean, Texas A&M has experienced that as well. So, backup spot for QB1 or QB2, I guess, Jalen Henderson or Marcel Reed. I would be leaning toward Jalen Henderson being the guy right now, although I think going into next year, because I believe, yes, Jalen Henderson can come back next year if Connor Wigman were to depart for the NFL. If the Aggies didn't go out and get a big-name quarterback in the transfer portal and you had Jalen Henderson, Marcel Reed battling it out, I could see Marcel Reed coming out on top and winning that starting job, his 3rd year on campus at that point. So for now, I think it's probably Jalen Henderson, but I like both those options with Henderson and Reed backing up Connor Wigman. Le'Veon Moss getting the starting running back spot nod. I believe it was Amari Daniels who was actually the leading rusher for Texas A&M last year, but he's in there with E.J. Smith backing him up. Obviously, just so upsetting and disappointing to see Reuben Owens go down. He's a special talent. I think he has all the tools to be everything he was built to be in high school as one of the top running backs in the country. On one hand, it is like, it's nice that the running back room is in a spot where, especially if you're going with a running back by committee, you still do have, I think, 3 very good options. So silver lining, hopefully it wouldn't just absolutely cripple the Aggies to the point where, there's nothing left in the cupboard. I fully confident Le'Veon Moss, Amari Daniels, EJ Smith. I think they give you a nice little punch in situational spots as well. But I would be surprised if we see Amari Daniels and Le'Veon Moss kind of as more of a 1A, 1B there at the running back. The wide receiver spots, we've got Noah Thomas at the X, Ja'Day Walker at the Z, and Cyrus Allen in the slot. Moose Muhammad behind Ja'Day Walker. A little surprised we didn't see Moose crack the starting lineup somewhere. Although not necessarily surprised that, if you were to tell me the top three is going to be Noah Thomas, Cyrus Allen, and Ja'Day Walker, like none of those guys individually surprised me that they cracked into the starting rotation. I think Cyrus Allen has a lot of potential. From what I get to see, really exciting. Just his skill set, to see it up close coming in from Louisiana Tech. Ja'Day Walker, really made a lot of strides toward the end of last year. And I think he does so much too for that locker room and that unit, whether he's on the field, whether he's just a cheerleader or doing whatever he does. Nia Smith shared a story with him last year about how much of a work ethic, a dog he was, kind of in summer workouts, just getting in extra balls and really going all out as at that time a newcomer to the team coming in from, I believe, Division II. So I think Ja'Day Walker's invaluable, not just on the field, but in the clubhouse as well. And Noah Thomas, listen, stay healthy. If he could stay healthy, he can really make things exciting with the 6'6" frame. I think he's got decent speed once he gets going too. Just almost like Connor Wigman, just need to see him healthy, keep it going for a whole year, and really start to break through. And we've seen those performances where, I think it was New Mexico, 3 touchdowns. He had a game last year with 3 touchdowns. I think it was New Mexico. And so, look, I think fully capable of continuing to do that. And if we can see that on a bigger basis, he's one of those guys where because of his frame and his skill set, there aren't a lot of people who can do what he does, with that 6'6" frame. It's almost like having a 7-foot center. Like, I don't care how well, a 6'9" guy's playing big and playing strong. At some point, you're 7 foot or you're 7 foot or you're not. So at some point, you're a 6'6" wide receiver or you're not. That opens up options for Texas A&M. And I'm really excited to see what he can do if he stays healthy. I think Moose will still be a big factor. I think Moose, you can move around. I think Micah T's listed on here as this backup to the slot. He's another enticing guy that I'm excited to see how they move around together. Isaiah Williams as well as Jacob Bostic. So that's kind of your look at wide receivers. At tight end, I thought this was one of the bigger surprises. Trey Watson is listed as your starter, and behind him, 3-way tie, so to speak, the oars on the depth chart, if you know, between Shane Calhoun, Donovan Green, and Theo from our big Swede at tight end. Donovan Green obviously coming off the injury, had that fantastic freshman year. Was curious to see where he was going to be, still working back through everything. He looks good when I see him out there. Big, physical, can block, can obviously make catches and make plays there. Shout out Dickinson, Texas. Trey Watson, from what I've seen, solid year at Fresno State last year. I'll be interested to see just schematically how Colin Klein tries to use these tight ends, how much of on the balance of, blocking and being a ball catcher they try to be. I think Donovan Green's, like I said, pretty solid at both. But it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I think that could be another one, kind of like with Amari Daniels, where, it kind of turns into a 1A, 1B situation. But Trey Watson starts out getting the nod there. All right, offensive line. We'll go left tackle over to right tackle. You've got Zune Basantis, and then at center, you still have a battle going on between Fayu and Mark Naboo at center. Right guard, you've got Armaj Reed Adams, transfer from Kansas. Right tackle, Demetrius Crownover or Ruben Fothery. So this is interesting because, of course, this is probably the one unit that the X factor for the season. Like how they do, if they're a good, solid. I mean, I think you could probably say how the offensive line does is going to be representative of how the team does. If they're good, solid, I think this is going to be a good, solid Texas A&M team. If they're pretty good, really good, I think the same can be said for the team. Maybe you can, have other units. Defensive line, of course, comes to note, carry you a little bit more. But my bigger point is, if this unit struggles, I don't care how nice your receivers, running backs, quarterback situation is. It's going to potentially be kind of a tough year to sit through for Aggie fans. Trey Zune, I mean, no doubter at left tackle there. Chase Pasantis, the only thing I was interested with that is moving him over to the left. I know in my mind, I wouldn't think it'd be that big of a deal. I know that it is an adjustment for some guys. So see him move over to left guard. Fayu, the Utah transfer, and Mark Naboo at center in a battle there. I would be surprised if it's not Naboo. It's not from any inside information I have, but just that seems where it's been trending. Got some time last year. I thought played pretty well. So all things considered, so I would lean in that direction in terms of my expectations, but always good to have options. Armaj Reed-Adams, a perfect kind of guy you want to bring in to bolster the offensive line as a transfer. Proven, played well at Kansas, has shown you what he can do. Well, they got him listed here, 6'5", 330. You've got TJ Shanahan backing him up. I think Shanahan, he's pretty ferocious if you remember him from high school. And unfortunately had his senior season cut short a little bit. But I think Reed-Adams kind of slides in, brings that experience factor. And then right tackle, this is where it gets interesting. Another, Demetrius Crownover kind of reminds me of Mark Naboo in terms of really a guy who always was talked about like, hey, keep an eye on this guy. Like he's another intimidating frame that you can't teach. I think he's 6'7", 330. And that being said, Ruben Fothery, 6'8", 320. Fothery, of course, coming off the injury. He was, I think, a big understated loss for the Aggies last year. I like that those guys are battling. That tells me, both those guys are, I think that probably says there's a better chance that they're both doing well and impressing rather than they're both kind of struggling and you're trying to pick the best of those options. That's kind of my mindset on that, is that a battle in that situation, just like the center position, is probably good because I think it's more likely that both guys have raised their games than the opposite scenario. All right, now let's flip over to defense. Going down the defensive line, you've got Nick Scorton, the pride of Bryan High School. Again, another guy that when we do the show, like when we really take it off, we're going to talk about him playing at Bryan all the time. Granted, I know he came in as a transfer, so that was an extenuating circumstances. But my point is I want to highlight these local athletes so that you know about them as they're coming in. Shamar Turner on the defensive line, as well as DJ Hicks or Albert Regis at that defensive tackle position, at that second D tackle spot. I would imagine my guess would be DJ Hicks, because he just pops. Every time I see him, he's making some kind of play where you say, wow, that guy, I mean, you can see all the tools, 6'5", 300, but moves really well for that frame. Regis, I think he's a very good player in the rotation. I kind of picture him rotating in to more situational stuff, give, either of those guys a breather between Shamar Turner and DJ Hicks. Behind those guys, you have Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy, Rodis Johnson, and Samu Taumano Pepe. I can never get it, but I try. At the other end spot, you've got Shamar Stewart, of course, the other Samar. Malik Silla, there's the backup. Malik Silla, another one of these intriguing guys with an intriguing frame. You really want to see kind of how he can pop off and see what he can do. But I think Shamar Stewart's in for a breakout year. Not the most bold prediction in the world, but he's a guy who does a lot of good things. He's kind of had that steady trajectory in terms of improvement year over year. That's always encouraging for me to see. I get a little worried about a guy. I almost feel better about a guy who, does a little something as a freshman, does a little bit more as a sophomore, has the talent and is building up, rather than a guy who just comes in from day one, has an amazing freshman year or like really overperforms, and the sophomore year is a little, we'll see how it goes. And then you wonder, okay, was the freshman year a blip? Can he bring it back? We've seen it before. That's the optimistic way of looking at it. I like the trajectory of Shamar Stewart. Cassius Howell at the jack position, followed by Ryland Kennedy. Ryland Kennedy, another guy. Listen, big track guy. Wasn't really a big track guy until I came here, but Ryland Kennedy, obviously, he did a little bit of that stuff in high school. I think some field events. So I always love an intriguing frame and skill set in that regard. I think he'll be fun to watch in the future. And Cassius Howell, coming in from Bowling Green, 6'4", 245. From what I've seen and from what I've, I kind of heard this and then I went out and observed it to try to see it for myself. Just a guy that kind of a little firecracker as far as what he can give you on the defensive line. Comes in a flurry with a lot of energy. I think he'll be a very nice way to spell, a Nick Scorton, a Shamar Stewart, rushing off the edge. And I think can cause a lot of havoc for the Aggies, hopefully in their opponent's backfield this year. All right. Corners, you've got 3 corner spots between, I should say nickel. You've got Tyreek Chappelle, if and when that comes into play, or Jaden Hill, the Florida transfer. And then the other 2 starting spots, you've got Chappelle. You got it listed as Chappelle or BJ Mays or Javon Thomas. And then on the other side, you've got Will Lee or Des Ricks, followed by Donovan Sanders as the backup to that unit. Bravion Rogers also backing up at the nickel spot. Listen, secondary, I think this is kind of the same thing as the offensive line is for the offense. I think the secondary is going to be for your defense. If the secondary is okay, then you can lean on the defensive line and the linebacking core. We skipped over the linebackers. I'll get to that. But, you can really lean on those units. But if that secondary is leaky, as we saw at times last year, it's going to be a little tricky. So I think that unit has to step up. Now, good news, bad news, you have a lot of options. Not necessarily bad news, but I really want to see some people just take ownership and lay claim big time to some of these spots and leave no doubt. I think Will Lee, I like his experience and what he brings from Kansas State, big frame, 6'3". Des Ricks, obviously the 5-star at Alabama, had a lot of promise. Didn't play a lot last year, but that's because he was a freshman at Alabama. And if you know Alabama, they had a few options last year. So I think Des Ricks is especially for the future of the program, is really tantalizing. Tyreek Chappelle, another guy like Chase Pasantis, I don't think I touched on this earlier, meant to. Huge to be able to bring him back from the transfer portal and see what he can do. Linebackers, I'm running a little behind here, so I'll go through this. Linebackers, Torian York, no doubt. After that, you got Solomon DeShields, Damian Sanford, and then Scooby Williams, the Florida transfer. Look, I think that linebacker spot, aside from Torian York, probably 3-man rotation there. York has been a stud. The interesting thing for me, not listed at cornerback, but listed as the number 2 kick returner and the punt returner, Terry Bussey, the 5-star from Timpson. I think you want to get him acclimated, but you don't want to put too much on his plate all at once, make him feel overwhelmed. So I think that's probably the right mindset. I think probably as a corner, especially, you really, you don't want to just throw the guy out there to the wolves and have him have his confidence battered if, he's not ready to make plays at a consistent level. Not saying that Terry Bussey isn't, but I do think, you have quite a talent there. You do want to be mindful of how you're managing his talent. All right, let's get to this list that came in the old inbox this morning. This is courtesy of, I don't even know if you can actually put action on these. This is via Bet Tennessee. They were talking about the BetTennessee.com. We don't condone it, but if you're just tickled by these different scenarios and you want to have some fun with it. So the week 1 College GameDay guest picker odds are out. And the odds-on favorite is, I don't understand this. Shane Gillis, comedian, Notre Dame fan. I understand he's a Notre Dame fan. I hand up, have not been watching College GameDay as religiously as I used to, given that it is a massive work day for me now. But not aware if they bring in opposing teams' guest pickers as sort of the standard operating procedure for College GameDay. That kind of surprised me. I'm just going to focus on the only other 2 A&M related people after that. You've got Johnny Manziel plus 500, 5-1, and then Tyler Toney plus 1,200, 12-1 odds. The Dude Perfect, Tyler Toney of Dude Perfect fame. I think that's probably a pretty good value given the collaboration they had with ESPN, the documentary, and everything else. If I were to go with the dark horse, I think the field between, okay, so you got Shane Gillis, Johnny Manziel, Tyler Toney, and then the other Notre Dame people they threw in there were Jerome Bettis, Vince Vaughn, and Joe Montana. The field is plus 350. So I guess that's to say none of these guys overwhelming favorites. I would throw in as a dark horse Parker McCullum. I know he just came to Kyle Field in the summer, and I think that would bring the house down. That would be my pick for College GameDay guest picker. Let me know who you want to see picking for Texas A&M on Saturday as Notre Dame comes to town. Maybe it'll be out by the time this video comes out, but that's kind of what we're looking at there. All right. Now, did want to just briefly touch on, like I said, we talk about all the sports here on campus, and that's going to be something that I really drive home. That's what I do with television. I pride myself on being as knowledgeable. If we were to do like the Director's Cup where every sport counts the same and you just did all-encompassing knowledge for the athletic department, I'd like to think I strive to be on the Mount Rushmore of that beat, like being plugged into all these different teams on campus. New rankings coming out for women's tennis, top 100 players. Of course, the Aggies, national champions last year, and Texas A&M brings back 5 players in the top 100. Mary Stoyana, the number 1 player in the country. By the way, an interesting wrinkle, they're moving the NCAA individual championships to the fall, and it's going to be in Waco at Baylor this year as well. So those are going to be moved up to the fall instead of in the spring after the team championships. So my point is these ladies are going to be going for their individual national titles very soon. And then as we turn the calendar over to the spring, we focus just on the team. Mary Stoyana definitely has to be, a factor in that NCAA championship race. Nicole Kieran is the number 9 player. She is the NCAA championship clincher for Texas A&M last year against Georgia. Again, if you watch this show as we get it going, I want her to be a household name. Nicole Kieran, won a national championship at Texas A&M. Mia Kupris, junior, ranked in number 20. Aggies the only team in the nation with 3 players in the top 20. Mia Kupris, I've been such a big fan of Mia Kupris since she came on campus. She's got a ton of skill, a ton of power, versatility. If you're not watching these ladies, you need to. I think they're going to do big things, not just at Texas A&M, but beyond. Luciana Perez, sophomore, number 68. Jeanette Morales, senior, at number 88, respectively. So excited to see what those ladies do. Also, want to give a shout out as we do little news and notes here at the end. Arthur Rinderknecht, Texas A&M men's tennis pro, advancing to the second round of the U.S. Open, had a thrilling 3-set, final set tie-breaking win over Chris Eubanks last night. The Frenchman, Rinderknecht, I believe, ranked just inside the top 60. So, he's always been very solid to a point. and been waiting to break through. I believe he plays Andrei Rublev, Russian, in the next round. So that will be a challenge, but we are going to be locked into that and seeing what Mr. Rinderknecht can do up at Arthur Ashe Stadium or at the complex up there. I guess not necessarily the main court, but yeah, exciting times around Aggie land. Opening day just around the corner for Texas A&M football. Again, I'm Ben Peck here, All in Aggies. So excited to do the show and really expound on some topics that we don't necessarily get to do in a 2-minute sports segment on television. So let me know your thoughts on, especially the depth chart is what we really covered today. I had other topics that we didn't even get around to because I just got so immersed in the upcoming opener for Texas A&M. But we will see you on Thursday. Until then, have a good one.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.